Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Financial Doctor Show. My name is Eni Oszlai, and I'm delighted to introduce you to today's guest, the lovely Mr. Michael Esch. Michael, how are you doing today?
Doing wonderfully, Annie. Thank you so much for having me, and I'm just absolutely looking forward to this. So,
Thank you so much. So I don't even know where to start with all the accolades that Michael have collected throughout his lifetime. He holds a DMA in performance from Rice University from the US. He has been receiving the top teacher designation from the National Teachers of Distinction Awards from the Royal Conservatory Music. He is basically one of the featured pianists on the RCM syllabus when someone is listening to those. He is the founder of Esch Music Academy, which is a sought-after elite music school. He's a performer. He's the president of the Markham Stouffville branch of the ORMTA. Did I miss something? I probably have. So why don't you share your story?
regular jack of all trades. you know, it's neat to look back and just see some of the stepping stones, but it's been a remarkable journey. Music is always something I've wanted to do since I was in my very early teens. One of the first recordings that I ever received was Glenn Gould playing the Goldberg Variations, and I think I was 8. And I took my first lesson shortly after that, actually. And my teacher asked, "What would you like to learn?" And I said, "The Goldberg Variations." That patted me on the head and said, "Maybe in 10 years." So 10 years later, I got to play the Goldberg Variations as my graduating recital before I went off to university. And I was very blessed to have a really fantastic initial teacher. She was so inspiring. She opened my mind to so many interpretive possibilities. She built that very crucial foundational technique that's so important to sow those seeds to sow at a young age. She opened the doors into the absolutely incredible realm that is Western art music, and from there, just I think once you make something your burning desire, right, in life, that and keep true to those intentions and honor each step of the way, then doors just kind of naturally swing open, and sometimes when they close, there's a great quote by Liszt that when one door closes, you break down the wall and make another opportunity. So I've always been able to roll with some of the career punches that have come my way and turn it into a positive. And I love what I do. And this is now a big focus of my career right now is teaching, and I love my students. I love to share the beauty and the creativity of the musical experience with them. So it's just it's been an absolute joy, and hopefully it's a joy that will continue for years to come. So.
Absolutely. And it's so funny because the first encounter that I had with you and your family was actually through your older daughter, Lauren.
Oh yeah.
She has been performing at, oh my God, I can't even remember, quite a few years ago, the Libertango with Gregory Van Dekas at the North York Music Festival's gala ceremony, because my daughter happened to have been winning first place, and so we were invited. And my jaw just dropped, and that's when I started to focus on, like, okay, who is this family? So here we are, many years later, we are in an interview together. But I had the pleasure to experience you and the family again in a concert, in one of your Christmas concerts that was specifically for the ORMTA. And you guys are hand down just talents pure, the entire family, starting obviously with you, but then of course your wife Jessica is just brilliant. And then of course your older daughter Lauren, and then even the little one Evie. So that's a testimonial in terms of that music is part of your DNA. That's what it is. Literally, it's part of your DNA. But so going back, because you have been performing and you have been traveling all across Europe as well. So tell us more in terms of what is your experience as a performer? What do you think is the role of an artist, and specifically for the 21st century?
Oh, as a performer, I've been very fortunate to be able to play concerts in the Far East, in Europe, throughout the US, and of course through Canada. I've had a lot of experience as a recitalist, and some experience as well as with orchestra soloists in concerto formats. And in recent years, aside from the pandemic, I've been playing a lot of chamber music. So I've had a chance to work with some just incredible collaborative artists. The Canadian Sinfonietta Chamber Players is an outstanding ensemble in Toronto. They play a lot of their concerts out of Glen Gould Studio, the CBC Center. I've been very privileged to work with some incredible soloists like Rivka Galani, who's one of the great viola soloists in the world. She's just an absolute dynamo of performer. It was such a privilege to be her collaborative pianist. And it's just every performance is an adventure. That's what's so incredible about art. It's so in the moment. There's so much excitement, so much risk that one can take. And it's kind of like investing, actually, that one wants to take manageable risk. And it teaches you a lot about yourself, right? A lot about your willpower, your discipline. And I think performing is one of the truly great gifts that we can give to each other as human beings, sharing these incredible edifices of art. Some of the great creations that the human spirit has been able to offer up to each other and perhaps our creator. So it's something that I try and keep a very central component in my own career experience. So I think to your question about the role of the artist in society, that's something we could talk about for weeks. I've always thought that, especially from the composer's point of view, perhaps, that music in many ways and art in general is always a reflection of where society is at in their various evolution transitions, right? If you listen to the music of Schoenberg, it's so intensely dissonant and chaotic and rhythmically complex, right? But he's a product of the World War era, and that was certainly a chaotic and somewhat surreal time to be alive. Whereas composers like Haydn are the products of these very aristocratic patronage environments. So their music is very bon goût, very good taste, very appealing to the general audience. And then you get composers like Bach, who signed off each one of his publications for the glory of God and the recreation of the mind. So there's many different evolutions, I think, as to what great compositional geniuses are trying to say with their music. And as far as the performer goes, we get to be the medium between that genius and the people who would like to appreciate that compositional genius. And it's a huge responsibility and a great privilege to be able to do that. And so I think from the performing artist standpoint, great art is there to uplift your collective brothers and sisters. And that's when I walk on stage, I don't treat a performance as something like a gladiatorial spectacle type of thing where I'm necessarily out to wow someone. I'm really out there to share and to be a medium for the incredibly divinely inspired message that's coming through these black and white notes on the page. So to be a noble uplifter, I hope, is what I aspire to as a performer and an artist in this day and age. And that's, of course, something that I try in every lesson to pass along to my students.
It's so funny how you said you want to be the medium, the noble uplifter, you want to be the inspiration, and so are you. Actually, there's a Canadian composer, Robert Rival, who has dedicated one of his compositions, 6 pieces of piano, to you. And that actually is a piece that's in the ARCT and LRCM repertoire list. Can you tell us more about that? Because now you are also a muse.
That is just a fantastic collection of work. So that's going back some years now. So we came back. I was finishing my doctorate around 2005 to 2006. And in my last year of the doctorate, I actually was very privileged to sign with an artist manager based in Toronto. and we were starting to get concerts in Canada, and it was too cumbersome. My youngest daughter was born at that time, and it was too cumbersome to keep flying back and forth. And I was far along in my studies that they allowed me to finish the remaining courses of my doctorate at the University of Toronto. So I was able to fly back, work with the manager. And it turned out that one of the classes that I was taking was a class in extended tertian harmony, which is kind of Debussy on steroids. So to a different subject, but and Rob Rival was one of the PhD composition students who just happened to be in the same class. And so we paired up performers and composers, and he had written the first piece for that class just as an assignment, and it was a fantastic piece. And so I teamed up with him and performed it, and it just completely bowled over the prof, and the class was delighted. And a few weeks later, he came out with the complete set, and he dedicated it to me, and then I premiered it in Houston. And then we had a Canadian premiere. I was invited to give a concert at the Royal Conservatory on their series, and from there on in, it's kind of swept across the country like wildfire. It's been played a lot. It's been played on CBC, CBC Radio, and now I get students who are just kind of creeping out of the woodwork, and you recommend an incredible collection of works for a senior exam, and that's it. So it's a piece that deserves to be played. Rob writes so beautifully. Just in general, he was the composer in residence with Edmonton Symphony for several years, and his pieces have been performed on the major media in the country, and at Carnegie Hall and some of the world's great halls. So, and he writes in a very accessibly contemporary musical language. So it's not Schoenbergian as we were before. A very curious mix of maybe Brahms, some Richard Strauss kind of fused in with Ravel, like extended tertian harmonies. So it's very accessible for the audience. It's a great challenge, but a manageable challenge for a senior student. And it was just one of the great privileges of my life. I mean, it was totally unexpected and completely out of the blue. And it was, I think, quite providential that we ended up sitting together in that class, because look at it really became the seeds of what sprouted into a very special friendship. So we still keep in touch a lot. So I've also had a chance to work a lot of his chamber music. He's written a wonderful violin piano sonata, a fantastic piano trio that I actually played with the Sinfonietta chamber players, Canadian Sinfonietta, years back. And every time we play his music, it's an automatic standing O from the audience. It's just, and this type of music can either be a total crash and burn or a total standing ovation. So Rob's the guy. He's doing it the right way, and really keeping the next generation of audience and performers fully engaged with his incredible music. So it's a privilege.
That's it. That's what Brahms, Strauss, and Ravel's marriage is doing to the audiences. And of course, let's mix you in there as well, because obviously your performance is adding the extra secret sauce to it. Talking of which, it's not just the performance, but it's also the teaching that makes you stand out. You really have this amazing elite music school in Markham, which is the Esch Music Academy. So do you mind telling us a little more about it? What are the goals of this music school, and how is it different from the others that are out there?
Well, we started the Esch Music Academy in 2009. My wife Jessica and I. My wife Jessica is a fantastic pianist and teacher herself, and she has been my crux every step of the way. So I have to send out huge kudos to Jessica. And it started just as a small commercial property. I was kind of doing everything. I was performing a little bit here, doing some collaborative work there. I was filling in for a teacher on sabbatical at Wilfrid Laurier. And we decided, I mean, Markham was the place for us. And it was a beautiful place to raise a family. And I think a very strongly budding artistic community in Markham. So a lot of support of the local orchestras. It's a place we wanted to be. And our vision for the school was to really establish a conservatory-like discipline and standard. I mean, bluntly, perhaps without the conservatory-like fees, perhaps, although that's classified. So that outside of your network, please don't make that public. No. To offer as much high quality solo instrumental lessons as we could across as broad a range of instruments as possible. So right now we've grown. We have a violin teacher on staff. We have a wonderful singing teacher. We have an outstanding lady from Singapore who's one of the gurus of early childhood music programs. And she's built a wonderful series of classes for us. Theory, history, the whole shebang. So our mission is very, very simple. We teach the love of music. And our goal for our students is that whether they decide to go on into music or just to keep music as a gift for their life, that they have reached the highest standards that their gift can afford. And when I see a new student come into the program, one has to diagnose where they're at that. But I never place any conditions on their learning except that they lead with their love of music and they cultivate it. And the number of times I've been surprised as to how a student might level off for the first year or so, and then they just sprout up into the advanced levels, and it's like they're a totally different, transformed human being, and their music and their artistic creativity is shepherding that forward motion. It's extremely inspiring to see. So we've had our fair share of accolades with the school. Our students have done extremely well in international festivals. In national festivals, we've had a couple of gold medal winners for the licentiate diploma. Those are all really nice when they come along. But some of the most remarkable experiences that I've had with my teaching have had nothing to do with the traditional avenue of festivals and exams and stuff like that. I had a student years back whose father passed away in her lesson. So he wasn't in the lesson, but he was at the hospital. And I went to the funeral ceremony of that. Sorry to be macabre, but she played in memory of her father. And that is something I will never forget. And to have been part of that type of journey for that type of outcome is something that's very difficult to put into words. But on a feeling realization type of thing, it's one of the real reasons that I do music for a living. So the interaction with the audience is amazing. The personal growth is amazing, but just seeing how it can make such transformational effects in someone's life is really, really something.
Absolutely. And thank you for sharing this story. And it was so interesting. As you were saying, I literally felt the chills going all over my body, because that's the power of music. That really is the power of music.
Yeah.
And you are able to really express anything and everything. So I'm so glad that you were able to give that outlet and that channel for that student that you specifically mentioned, but to all of the others as well, because there's a reason why they are getting all these accolades left, right, center. So thank you for doing what you're doing. Now, talking of which, why do you think is musical education so important, not just for the young people, but pretty much for anyone and everyone?
Well, again, that's something we could talk about for weeks as well. I'll defer to Plato. It was Plato who said that music should be the keys to learning everything. Teach children first only music. For within the environs of music lies the keys to all learning. Right. So the fact that invariably this gets lost on many governments in terms of supporting the arts and all of that jazz is perhaps more a statement on governmental practice than it is on Plato or what have you. But Liszt said that the prerequisite for the betterment of the artist is first the betterment of the human being. And I believe that intensely, but I also believe the flip side, that the betterment of the human being can be greatly enhanced through the musical process, because music is something that I think, especially for young children, it provides discipline, it provides structure. It gets them in touch with their emotional wherewithal. And I mean the kaleidoscopic emotional wherewithal. So in a very safe laboratory environment, I mean, if you just need to turn on the news and look at the suffering that's there in the world, and you can get that intense type of emotional expression in your music. You can also get effusive joy and everything in between within your musical styles. And it's a safe environment with which to go on that journey of self-discovery. And I think it's been very well documented now by a lot of leading universities that children who are fully immersed in music, whether it's participating directly with a musical instrument, or just learning to appreciate music, going to concerts, going to museums, etc., that they're just deeper human beings. They listen more carefully. They're more empathetic to others, more compassionate to others. So, I think the way that I try and structure my own life, I mean, music is the extension, but first you have to kind of be rooted within yourself. So my first goal when I'm teaching is to teach the love of music, and just to use that as such an incredible tool for self-exploration. And just in terms of the intellectual, the emotional, when you play the music of Bach, the spiritual, the coordinative, physical, spatial, tactile, all of these things. I mean, reflexive. You'd be very hard pressed, in my view, at anything within the pre-college experience of young people to find anything that challenges and at the same time ennobles to the degree that serious music education can.
Absolutely. And it's so funny how you're bringing out Johann Sebastian Bach as an example, because I remember my first diploma is actually, I'm a German teacher. And when I went to the university entrance exam, one of the questions that they had when we had the verbal exams, like, okay, what is it that you like to do? And they talked about music, because I was growing up playing the piano and singing with the choir and whatever else. And I said, okay, so who's your favorite composer? And I said, well, Bach. And then they asked why. And they were thinking that I'm going to recite them his life. And I'm like, no. And I gave them something similar and they were speechless. But it's so beautiful to hear. And it's almost like a reaffirmation. Yeah, there you go. There you go. It's really resonating on a much, much deeper level. Music is going and it's ingraining into someone's soul. So it's so beautiful. Now, because you are obviously not just a teacher, although you are a phenomenal teacher, you're also a performer. So this is a tricky question, Michael. Would you say that a good teacher needs to be also a good performer?
It helps. It helps, if only from the perspective that continually placing oneself in the fire of performance, right? How do I put this? I had a teacher once who said that in your practicing, be a perfectionist. In your performing, be a realist. And so I think teachers have to shepherd the ideal, the conceptual ideal. They have to be, the inspiration for this ideal for their students. But sometimes the ideal seems like an unreachable goal for the student. So if the student knows that you're in the trenches with them, right, that they know that you get nervous before a performance, or that you sometimes get sweaty palms during a performance, or that you hit a couple of wrong notes, you're a human being, not a human perfect during a performance, right, then they can better appreciate that kind of scale that needs to be weighed between the perfectionist drive and the realist mindset in the end game. So I'm not... There are certainly examples of teachers who have stopped performing and are still churning out outstanding students. In my own experience, and again, I think it's probably fair for me to only speak from my own experience. I found it an asset. So just to be able to demonstrate for my students where maybe a verbalization and a descriptive imagery leaves off, or sometimes that can be less for the student to imitate, but rather to give them some ideas about what an idea could expand into. right? Depending on the acoustic that they're preparing for, or what have you. So in my experience, it's been an asset.
Beautiful. Talking of performances, which one would you say is your most memorable or favorite concert experience, Michael?
Oh boy. Years ago, one of the first concerto opportunities I ever got was to play Beethoven First Concerto with an orchestra called the Toronto Philharmonia. And I don't know if you remember Kerry Stratton
Oh,
from
yes.
the 6.3 FM, but that was his first orchestra, and he was doing some wonderful things with that orchestra. And they were the orchestra in residence at the Toronto Centre for the Arts, which I think has changed its name since, but it's up on Shepherd Avenue. And I have to say, just as an aside, the absolute greatest piano I've ever played on is the Hamburg Steinway at that concert hall. It's like a dream. It's one of the greatest pianos ever. Anyway, they were doing the Beethoven 5 piano concertos, and he had an absolute all-star lineup. I mean, Janina Falkowska was played number 4. Jeffrey Swan, a former Van Cliburn winner, did the Emperor Concerto, and little old me from the six of nowhere got to play the first concerto, and it was my first time having the experience of doing a dress rehearsal on the day of the performance and then doing the big money performance in the evening. And that was quite an interesting thing. I was a basket case after the dress rehearsal because the mistake of I didn't want to freak out the orchestra musicians by just thinking that I was doing a milquetoast go through, right? I wanted to make sure that they knew that I meant business. So I ended up giving away a little bit too much energy. So I went home and just fell asleep for a couple of hours. And then I came back and I was groggy. But when I got on stage, it was one of those magical moments where you get into that zone. And sometimes you'll hear about athletes talk about a zone where everything kind of becomes still. You're kind of free of your body. You're just in that realm of very free. You can do everything, responds at will. And I have to say, that's not something that happens a lot in performance, but when it does, it is an absolutely liberating experience. And I'll never forget that, because when we were coming through the coda of the final movement, people were already standing up and clapping. It was just awesome. And Kerry, at the end of it, everybody's clapping, and I jumped up, giving him a big hug, and he threw down his baton. Dramatically, what a guy! It was one for the record book. So, so that's something I'll never forget. Never forget. So, playing the great chamber works is also an incredible experience. Actually, the last concert I gave before the pandemic struck was with Canadian Sinfonietta chamber players, and we played the Brahms and Dohnányi piano quintets, and those are the Mount Everest of chamber music literature, in my view. And to be able, it's a little bit different type of mindset than concerto playing, where concertos are a little more David versus Goliath type of thing, and you have to hold your own against the massiveness and the grandiosity of the orchestra. Chamber music is much more intimate and much more in the moment, trading off back and forth. You have to respect the people that you're playing with. You have to trust them implicitly. You have to be able to roll with the punches if someone takes a spontaneous rubato or what have you, right? So that last concert that we played was also a very, very memorable one. And just to be able to, like I said, to be the medium through which these incredible works of art can speak is just such a privilege.
That's amazing. Now, do you have any upcoming projects?
I do. So right now I'm working on a recording project of the music of Brahms. So Brahms is, I have to say, Bach and Brahms are about as good as it gets for me. So Brahms is great because he takes the incredible contrapuntal intimacy of Bach, the harmonic and structural edifices of Beethoven, and the pure heart-on sleeve romanticism of Chopin, and he kind of fuses it all into one. And so the late works of Brahms are pretty spectacular pieces. So that's where I'm hoping to go. So once the pandemic's over, I've got to brush up some polish and hopefully get into the recording studio. So
Beautiful. Can't wait to experience that, Michael. So now going back to your studio, because you are obviously a businessman, you have been founding that amazing elite music studio of yours, Esch Music Academy. So putting on the business hat of yours, what would you say, what is your secret sauce? Why are you so successful in raising out all these amazing talents and helping them to appreciate the love of music, but at the same time, looking at the concept of the starving artist? So is there a disconnect?
I think one of the things that is absolutely not taught in music schools generally, and I'm speaking more now at the collegiate and university levels, is basically how to structure your life. Right? You're taught how to perform. You're taught, networking, and of course all of the historical and theoretical perspective. But then people get out into the real world, and it's like they get hit by a Mack truck type of thing. So I don't subscribe to the notion of the starving artist. Again, getting back to just my core values, I've always believed that when you intensely love what you do, that you will draw more often than not people who are in accordance with that train of thought. And it sounds a little airy-fairy, but the money will come, right? The profit will take the form that it needs to take for that period in your life, and so far we've been very blessed with that. So, I've been the beneficiary of some incredible teaching all over the course of my experience, and so that's the easy part, passing that tradition down and trying to inspire my students for the next level. With the business aspect, we do try and really structure our business so that there are very clear-cut avenues for the students. There's a very structured approach to the theory structuring, timelines, and things like that, which musicians are notoriously famous for being kind of will-o'-the-wisp, spur of the moment type of thing. So I think you have to be very disciplined in how you structure your business. Working with an excellent accountant is a plus. I would also say that the anatomy of the music career is very different than it was 40 years ago, even 10, 15 years ago. When I was saying that years ago, I worked with an artist manager, and I remember when I came back to Canada, she said, in the 1960s, there was a CBC concert on just about every street corner. And now, there might be one or two in the country that features classical artists. And in the end stages of my doctorate, I was sending out applications to various universities, and I'd phone up the chair of the performance department, and they say, "Well, thank you for your application. You're one of about 350 people who have applied for this one position, and this is the only position we've had open in the last 20 years." So I quickly realized that was going to be the hard way to get into the system. So I'll throw out another list comment that. Sometimes you have to climb up to the top of the hill and make a bonfire. Or that's a total embellishment of that, but light a fire from high that all can see. So that was our goal with the school, was to create a very high standard school, but also to create a business aspect that our family could do well by. And I think we've met that balance of being fair with our pricing models, and also, very very severe with our standards, in a good way, severe. So.
Absolutely. So what I'm really hearing is that it's not just the love of music and the amazing quality of musical education that you are giving to your students, but also the business aspect as well, in terms of, okay, how can you monetize your talent once you choose that this is the way you want to go and the way you want to live your life. Is that a correct statement?
That is absolutely correct. Yeah. And one thing I would encourage younger students who are going through the university process right now is to financially educate yourself. Right, consult masters such as yourself, right, who have such a strong background in finance and investment. Learn financial literacy, because up until my 20s, I was completely financially illiterate. And
that's recent, Michael. It's all good.
I'm still a spring chicken, but but you know it's extremely important. So because the days of tenured jobs at universities are running out. I think that aspect of the career is those type of opportunities are very, very few and far between. So when you start out, if you're doing something on an Esch Music Academy type of scale, then you also need to have the end game very much in your sights. How am I going to retire? What type of financial assets do I need in order to retire? And what type of lifestyle do I want to lead in my retirement? These are all questions that people should be asking when they're very young, and then to stick in a very disciplined fashion to that in the years moving forward.
It's so funny. This is actually something that I'm teaching my clients. So you and I are definitely on the same wavelength with this one, because you have to see your vision, the end vision where you want to be, and then reverse engineer it to understand the steps that you need to do. So kudos to you. Kudos to you, Michael. Now, continuing on the business model and the business mindset, you're also big on musical blogs. So tell us more about why.
Well, I I feel that each of us needs to take steps to give back to society. So in my very humble position of being in a lockdown on a pandemic, I decided that I would start a blog where I would have several facets to the blog. My overall focus is to continue to educate, to share this incredible edifice of Western art music that one could live several lifetimes and still not be able to learn all that there is to learn about it. It's just an incredible, endless treasure. I want to inspire my students by introducing them to some of the great masters that they otherwise might not. So I highlight some of the great pianists of the last 100 years, some of the great violinists, the orchestras, the conductors, and what have you. I get into the various philosophical subjects as to why I do what I do, composer interviews, and something that I've really enjoyed doing is highlighting some of the smaller arts organizations, especially in the province of Ontario, that sometimes might get a little bit overlooked by some of the government grant supports or the larger business support of their endeavors, but who I think are really doing something quite special and unique, especially within their smaller microcosm of a smaller town or county or what have you, and they're very deserving of some publicity and some recognition, and they've been struggling a lot. So I'm using this blog kind of as a bit of a megaphone to preach aloft that Canada has consistently punched above its weight for decades in terms of churning out international quality soloists, ensembles, and music festivals. So, and we shouldn't just be all about hockey, although hockey has a place. So I'm hoping that people will come to the musical blog and just read some short essays about topics which I'm very passionate about. And I hope it's infectious and it causes them to be inspired to, after a nice dinner downtown, to go hear the TSO or one of the smaller orchestras in the GTA or what have you, or come to one of my recitals. Please come in the future. So yeah, it's a reciprocal relationship, right? So the arts need the governments and the business community and the general populace, and I think it's vice versa as well. So in my own small way, that's what I'm trying to achieve.
Good for you. And it's not just you, but pretty much the entire family who is involved, and various degrees of arts are supported in many different ways. So music is quite obvious because, as we discussed at the very beginning, it's part of the family's DNA. But I have been following your wife Jessica's adventures of nature and photography, and I was really enjoying the photo series about the North Pole. So you guys went there as well, and that was quite inspirational. So, thinking about that, being in the North Pole, and you are sitting on this major piece of ice, right? Like, how would you because you really are an authority when it comes to music, right? How would you really combine what you experience in nature versus what music gives to you?
Well, I think earlier we were talking about getting into that zone where everything in a really, when everything lines up in a performance, everything kind of becomes still and alive, paradoxically. And in Japanese Zen, there's a term called satori, which literally means precisely that. You're in nature, and everything is so peacefully calm and yet vibrantly alive that your mind just kind of falls away, right? You get to that state of no mind, and it's revivifying. And I think, honestly, I think if a few more governmental leaders took a few more piano lessons and went for a few more nature walks, the world would be a heck of a better place in general. But revivifying, absolutely, for the mind. Physically, it's one of the best things you can do. It's something I try and do several times a week. It's to get out for hikes and to go out to these adventurous places. And you know, in the broader music, I mean, I've quoted Liszt quite a few times today, but so much of his music from the Années de Pèlerinage, right, are about his journeys in Switzerland and soaking in the Italian landscape. And I think art and nature are two sides of the same coin. Maybe musical art is, how do I put this? If nature is God's canvas, then maybe musical art is humanity's canvas in celebration of the divine and each other, perhaps.
Wow, that was so beautifully put. I love it.
Yeah.
Now, because you were asking the audience to attend future performances, and we know that there is a recording already in the works, what else is in for you? What is the future holding for you, Michael?
Well, I'm not sure this is classified material anymore, so I'll hopefully I don't get a call from the CIA, but I'm supposed to be adjudicating the national piano competition next year. So that's for the Canadian Federation of Music Teachers Association, CFMTA, and I believe that's going to be held in Edmonton. So probably next July. So that's going to be exciting. I do lots of recital adjudication and examining for the Royal Conservatory, and that's such an incredible thing to be part of. And I mean, the pandemic has hit music teachers across the country very, very hard, and what the conservatory has done to not only to save the system, but to bolster it and to rebuild it, and to, speaking of business models, to develop this online capacity where students internationally now can take their exams. It's just been an incredible service to the teaching populace of the country. And it's an incredible thing for me to be part of that as well. So I'm keeping up with the examining as well, some recording, and metaphorically cracking the whip for the students. So we've been very, very lucky. We've got some ferocious talents in our school right now. And over the last few years, I've had a young man play all 12 Liszt Transcendental Etudes, record them. And it's pretty fantastic. I've had students, one young lady who has done the entire first book of the Well-Tempered Clavier of Bach and the Goldberg Variations.
Wasn't it Antian?
It was Antian.
There you go. She's amazing.
She's something else, and a few up and comers who are really, really tearing up the scene. My oldest daughter Lauren actually is she was doing a split double major between German studies and political science, but just felt the pull of music, and so she's transferring into the University of Toronto Faculty of Music for this upcoming year. So that's going to be exciting. And my youngest daughter just got a 98 on her grade 6 exam. So things are good. I speak as an examiner now, and 98 is a virtually impossible mark to get on a music.
It is.
Very, very proud of it.
Many heartfelt congratulations. Michael, this has been such a pleasure showcasing you today and learning more about what you're doing, the upcoming projects, and even the mindset behind the success that you are creating, not just for your family, but also for your students and the future generation of actual musicians who are giving this beautiful divine that you were describing so beautifully. So thank you for that. And so now if anyone feels compelled to reach out to you to learn more about you, how they can collaborate and work with you as a performer, or how can they become your student perhaps, how can they get in touch with you?
Just all of our contact information is listed on our website at www.eschmusicacademy.com. So please come, and we're happy to chat. So
Perfect, Michael. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your time, and thank you for everything that you do.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.